तो गुड मॉर्निंग. पोल्यूशन कम हुआ कुछ? थोड़ा कम हुआ सनलाइट की वजह से. So what measures are you taking? Filters? HEPA filters use करो? नहीं. I have dust allergy. It's very detrimental to me. It's okay. Okay, so we had discussed the various aspects of Weberian bureaucracy. Okay, the nature of the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats both. Okay. Now we had previously discussed that there is instrumental view of bureaucracy, okay, apart from the behavioral and structural, okay, and discretionist view both. What is instrumental view? Instrument, right. So why bureaucracy must be treated only as an instrument? Why it should be treated only as an instrument and not as an institution? No, let us leave all the negatives. Okay, in general, if we want to treat bureaucracy as an institution, why should we not do it? The rational system will always be a threat to a layman system. Okay. Always more powerful, more competent than a layman system. Layman system is the political system. Okay. In fact, the entire representative democracy is a layman system. Okay. So that is why we don't want it to give a institutional character. Okay. But if by law, by constitution, we are creating an an instrument of bureaucracy, then how it becomes an institution? Now there is another perspective that the bureaucracy becomes an institution. Then how does it become? By itself? You have not given the powers to the bureaucracy to become an institution. So how it converts into an institution?
It has a longer knowledge base.
No, what is the process? I hope you don't mind me having tea. Fine.
So the more rational it becomes, the more stronger it will be.
Right, well, that is correct. The more rational it will become. It is already an ideal rational system. Okay, what is discretionist view? No, bureaucracy must get some leeway or freedom to act. Okay, that is one important aspect. Why should it do that? Why should we give freedom to bureaucracy? Okay. Freedom in what sense? When you have designed the structure, then what freedom you want to give? Decision making. Okay. There are circumstances which involve or which assume that bureaucrat is capable of making the decisions which are not pre-decided. Problems like disasters, okay, violation of human rights, communalism, okay, emergency, okay, natural catastrophe. Many things can be there where he might require a discretion or something like creativity of his own. Okay. But there must be limit to that creativity. Okay. So many scholars have explored this idea, okay, and they have started or they criticize the bureaucracy. Okay, the maximum criticism is of the structure of the bureaucracy, okay, and of the Weberian methodology, both. Okay. So when we are saying criticism of Weber and criticism of Weberian bureaucracy, they are two different things. Okay. Criticism of Weber may also include the criticism of the methodology of Weber, or Weber as a theorist himself. Okay. But criticism of Weberian bureaucracy would be mostly related to the structure and the behavioral dysfunctionalities of bureaucracy. Okay. But even if it is asked, okay, you must use a general sense of the term that it is the criticism of the bureaucracy only. So you can include the criticism of Weber also. Okay. So let us start with the critique. Okay. Okay. Ideally, why should we criticize some theory or theorist? Why should we criticize them? We have already assumed that they are the products of their own context. Okay, and obviously it is impossible for us even today to fathom all the aspects of the context today. ठीक है, तो आगे जो आप करेंगे, okay, that may not reflect the true understanding of the context today. So you might act based on your understanding of the context. So what they did was the same thing, then why should we criticize them? Because this criticism is fundamental to the evolution of pub ad. Every later theories which developed, post-bureaucratic developments, okay, they are basically based on the Weberian criticism. Why should we criticize Weber? कुछ तो बोलो भैया, मुझे कम बोलने दो, तुम ज्यादा बोलो. Correct.
Using the same model forever with all its flaws, they'll be doing.
No, but in general, why do we criticize certain things?
To add something upon already discussed.
Your father must be the most critical element in your family, eh? Or mother. Okay, so if I tell my father anything, मैं IIT में निकल गया, अच्छा ठीक है. IAS का इंटरव्यू देना, ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, बन जाओ पहले. ठीक है, ये किया, अच्छा ठीक है. What is the meaning of that? Okay, that is a criticism. What is a critique? Oh, there's a big difference. When you simply criticize, even though common sensically we understand both the terms as same, but the critique means what? Critique is an informed criticism. It is a criticism not just for the sake of criticism. तो कुछ लोगों को मैंने वैसे ही बोला है कि भाई, if you have doubts, ask me. Okay, I can be here for 24/7 to solve your doubts. But don't ask me doubts just for the sake of doubt. कुछ पूछना है इसलिए पूछ रहे हो, नहीं. I must see your homework. ठीक है, तुम्हारे डाउट से मुझे पता चल जाता है कि तुमने कितना होमवर्क किया है. So logic is, we are simply criticizing him just because he was an established theorist, or there is some informed criticism. Okay, you kindly write a footnote. Okay. There is something known as critical perspective or critical approach to the study of pub ad. Okay, or in any social sciences we have a critical approach. Okay. So what is a critical approach? Okay, the critical approach is also a way to view things. Okay, like when we say Marx. So Marx is viewing the dysfunctionalities of capitalism. He is not against capitalism. But he is saying that if everybody accepts that capitalism is functional only, all the benefits of capitalism, then who is going to find out that there are certain negatives behind it? Okay. So there are some functional theorists and there are some dysfunctional theorists. Okay. Dysfunctional word why I am using? Because they are not studying the benefits or the positives of a particular theory, but they want to study the negatives of a particular theory. Not just to criticize this, but to find out what are the limitations of this approach. Okay, so there is a critical perspective. One of the very famous theorists who is associated with this is the Marx. Okay, and in public administration there is another person who is very popular, Habermas. Okay, you kindly write their names so that you don't forget. Habermas established, in fact, the critical perspective in the social sciences. In fact, the criticism of bureaucracy. One of the most important theorists. Okay, then Herbert Marcus. Denhart and Denhart, Gramsci. Okay, there are a number of people who are associated, but Habermas is very dominant. Okay. And there are so many other people, but critical approach, you understand that, okay, if a question comes, that provide a critical approach or provide a critical view to the Weberian bureaucracy. So you must bring this idea. Okay. Maybe one line, two line that, okay, critical approach does not concern merely with the criticism of the theory, but it tries to develop an alternative theory to the established. Okay. So if we say bureaucracy is functional, that means we are assuming that bureaucracy as a system, as a model, is the best for the society. It contributes to the society, but it may not only contribute, but it may create some disturbance also. Okay. Secularism, okay, religion, anything we can view from the critical perspective. So the moment I say religion is functional to the society, that does not mean that religion is only contributing positively to the society. There are certain dysfunctionalities, but who will study? The critical theorists. Okay. So understand that way, there are certain critical theorists and there are certain people who have criticized. They are different. Okay. Critical theorists are those people whose methodology is critical. They will not study any phenomena with respect to its functionality, but always with respect to its dysfunctionality. Are you understanding? So their approach itself is critical. Their theory making starts from the critical framework. Okay. So let us start with the criticism of bureaucracy. Now, let us criticize the methodology of Weber. Okay, so Weber is using what kind of methodology? Which approach he uses? Anti-positivism. Correct. And anti-positivism. Okay, ideal type approach. Historical comparative approach. Okay. What is the existent determinism in Weber's model? यानी किस चीज से वो obsessed है? With what he is obsessed? His entire model is centric to something. What is that? Power and authority. He is viewing the institutions as what? As the instruments of exercising domination. Why is he not viewing institutions in other form? He is mostly concerned with the institutions of power, okay, and nothing else. Or he is more concerned with the power or authority as a variable. But that is not the only thing which governs a society. What about collaboration? What about consensus? What about culture, religion? They also do it. But he is what? He is zeroing down everything to the concept of power and authority. Okay, so his model is somewhere authority, centric. Okay. Also, he is too obsessed with obviously the structural aspects. Okay. He is obsessed with the structure, concerned about the structural idealism. Okay. He is looking for an ideal structure, ideal structure. Okay. He assumes that if these structures are best, then their functions will or their consequences will also be best. That is not correct. So his structural idealism means that he neglects of the institution or bureaucracy. He neglects the ecological view of the bureaucracy. Okay. So even though he is studying it with a sociological perspective, but ultimately what he wants, a rational structure, and this rational structure does not have any elements of the society. How can a structure serve a society that does not conform to the values of the society? Okay. So his logic is that he wants an ideal structure to serve the society, but that structure will not have anything or anything commonality with the society. Okay. So he is obsessed with the structural idealism. Fine. Then superiority of legal rational. So here also his comparison may be questioned. That why is he assuming that it is only the legal rational which will be superior to the other forms of authority system? In number of situations you will find that the charismatic leadership or charismatic authority and the traditional authority works better than the legal rational system. Okay, like Naxalism. If you have to solve the problem of Naxalism, okay, you might not use a procedure-based approach. Okay, you will have to use a more consensus or emotion-based approach. So somewhere the cultural value system will be more effective there. Rural India. Okay. Any program policy which you implement, you want to implement in the regions which are quite backward. Okay, so there you go through a legal rational route. What will happen? The people will instantly react to those systems. So his approach also that it will always be efficient may not be correct. Ideally, on paper, theoretically it may be efficient, but in reality it may not be. Fine. So this, how can we criticize this? How you criticize this approach? Positivist hai? Most of the books you'll read, they'll say Weber was infatuated by a rational legal structure. Okay, he was obsessed with empiricism, and that is not correct. He wanted an empirical structure, but the way he arrived at the empirical structure was totally anti-positivist. Okay, so why it can be criticized? Now see, Weber is saying that my structure is ideal, but he is using an empathetic approach. Okay. That means what? His structure reflects the sentiments of his own context. Try to understand. And let's say that a context in the broader way or broader sense, the context may include the Western countries. So whatever elements of the society that he uses to understand the evolution of institution, those are basically the Western values. So these, or implementing this system in the developing countries, is impossible. Okay, why? Because his context is purely Western in nature. So if he is trying to study the society, its factors, okay, and trying to generalize that view, that may not be accepted. Are you understanding this? No. Thoda. Kunjam. Right, okay, right. Okay. You have written this part. Okay. Right, anti-positivism or what's an? Right. Okay, Weber wanted to conceptualize an ideal structure. Wanted to conceptualize an ideal structure but through anti-positivist methodology. By studying the society by studying the society and its nature, he tries to understand how institutions evolve. The context, next line, the context, that is society, that he uses to develop a universal model of bureaucracy is basically a Western society. The moment this model is used in non-Western context, its utility is limited. So we can say what that? This model does not have the elements of the, it does not have the cultural elements of the developing society. So when you use it, okay, methodologically it is correct, no doubt. He is trying to understand, but his context was, now imagine when he is talking about 1900 or late 1800s, when he is talking about the evolution or understanding of the different institutions in the Western society, at that time what would have been the cultural development or the social development in the non-Western societies? Nothing. They were developed, but okay, they were subjugated to a colonial rule. Okay. He could not comprehend that reality. Okay. He was seeing instability in Europe, transformation of monarchies into benevolent monarchies or into democracies. Okay. So basically he was seeing which societies? The societies which were drastically changing. Whereas most of these societies which were not much changing in the developing countries, but they were more, you can say they were more in turmoil than the Western societies. Alien rule, alien culture, their own native culture and the diversity which exists in those societies, they were coming in conflict with each other. So you can say compared to the non-Western society, the Western society was much more stable because you can predict the trend of evolution. But you cannot predict the trend of evolution of a developing country. But you can predict the trend of evolution of a developed country. Why? If he says now industrialization becomes the dominant force, what does it mean? That I can expect that, okay, what is going to happen? Here neither the cultural development was there, okay, neither they had independent power of decision making, nor they were politically stable, nor economically stable, nor culturally stable. So what could predict about these societies? Nothing. Understanding? At least a trend is visible in the Western society. Okay, and that is why he is easily able to historically compare it. If he had tried to understand the evolution or what kind of systems will be useful in the non-Western societies, it would have been very difficult for him. Okay, are you getting this point? Are you understanding? If you are not understanding, kindly raise a doubt. Okay. So if he had visualized a cross-cultural understanding, okay, using the elements of both the cultures, then probably he would not have come up with an ideal Weberian bureaucracy. Or maybe he could not have conceived of a structure that will be ideal ever. Okay. So the Western culture, okay, more or less, America, Europe, okay, the Western culture is more, or you can say it is more compatible with the institution of bureaucracy than the non-Western culture. So in spite of his methodology being normative in nature, normative means he understands the socio-cultural realities, but these realities are mostly Western in nature. They are not non-Western. Are you getting this? So if I say what kind of police we require, and we say this is the ideal model of police, okay. So how are we assuming that it is ideal model? We are trying to understand our circumstances, and based on that we say, okay, this society will transform this way and this is the ideal police which is required. Okay, but what about the other society? That means I am assuming that all the societies will transform in the same manner. Are you getting me? If industrialization is considered as so dominant force, then the industrialization, the trend of industrialization and the impact of the industrialization should have been similar as it is in the Western country and non-Western country. But it is not so. Okay, even today you see the non-Western context or Indian context, the impact of industrialization. It is not a linear growth. There it might be a linear growth. Because society was already at a comparative level of development. Okay, more or less stabilized culture by trade. They're quite, you can say the families were quite opulent in the Europe. They had huge money. Trade was flourishing. Most of the benefits they were reaping from their colonies. So you cannot say that those societies were as backward as the non-Western societies. So maybe you can predict that, okay, they will become rational or they will rationalize. Okay. Here you cannot predict. What is happening in India, you see, the biggest example. The more literate we are becoming, the more backward we are becoming. Okay. If I use westernization or modernization as the benchmark, we are becoming more backward. How? Can you tell me? by 1900 से लेके या 1857 से लेके 1950 or 47 तक, you go and find out how many riots and how many caste-based atrocities took place in India. You might say, okay, there was a British control. Okay. Now what is happening? 1950 to 19 or 2000. In just 50 years, how many problems India had to face? Numerous. Okay, but at the same time, the social development indicators are increasing. Okay. Huge corruption, okay, huge conflicts, communalism is becoming a very dominant force. Okay. In fact, you can say that cultural diversity has become a threat to this nation itself. इसका मतलब क्या? We are going back to the medieval era. Okay, road rage, a number of things which we experience today. They reflect what? They reflect a reactive sentiment of the individuals. So you are talking about composite culture. Okay, you are talking about increasing literacy will create more consciousness amongst people. Social capital will increase. Where is it? Nowhere. Okay. So you can say that the impact of the industrialization or the kind of a linear change which he predicts for the Western society, that kind of linear change is not happening in the non-Western society. Okay. Worth-Sahan approach. Worth-Sahan approach, we said it is like empathetic listening. Okay, so empathetic listening, okay, what does it mean? Right? He's actually putting himself into that particular society. That means what? He is trying to understand the basic factors and the variables which govern a particular society by putting himself into that society. So for a theorist, this is a very good approach because it will eliminate any kinds of biasness from the theorist view. Okay, because he will become part of that process. Okay, but this is what? This is simply a theoretical construct. It is not a reality. But this approach to view things is what? It is a theoretical extrapolation, it is not a reality. Okay, that means what? He is trying to understand these factors only which suit the understanding of the bureaucracy, nothing else. He is eliminating all those factors by himself, okay, which he assumes they are not beneficial to the understanding of the evolution of the bureaucracy. So this makes it an ideal type. Okay. Because you're what? You're idealizing the society and its factors, okay, or the circumstance of the society, eliminating all those things which might have created a problem in your theory building. So you are eliminating it. Very simply you are saying that, okay, no. But if you think, simplify, let us say, if you talk about that there is a collective conscience and there is a social action which is governed by, but there will be a major part of the social non-action also and social ill action also. डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है तो कहीं ना कहीं क्राइम भी तो होगा, क्राइम भी डोमिनेंट हो सकता है, ठीक है। फॉर्मल इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर इमर्जिंग तो माफिया भी तो होगा, पैरेलल इंस्टीट्यूशंस भी तो होंगे. दैट मीन्स यू डिड नॉट टुक देम इनटू द व्यू. You safely ignored them for what? For your theory building. So ideal type approach is also a criticism that he, by or through a simplification of the real world, what he is doing? He is creating his own microcosm of reality. कृष्ण अवतार के बारे में सुना है भाई? तो कृष्ण जी जब मिट्टी खा रहे थे, he was eating mud, then the mother comes, यशोदा जी, and she says open your mouth, तो पूरा ब्रह्मांड जो उनके मुंह में दिखने लगा. Okay, that is the microcosm. Okay, he tries to, you can say what, artificially create a reality so that he can develop a theory. So this reality may not reflect the true reality of the society. So he safely ignores all those variables, just like Gulick and Urwick, okay, which might be a hindrance to the rationality of the structure. But that does not mean that those factors are not there. अगर आप बोले मैं बहुत पढ़ रहा हूं, I am studying too much, 15 hours, 14 hours, 20 hours a day, okay, obviously that you will do only one day in a week. Rest of the days you will glorify that you have studied 20 hours one day. Okay, so you will keep compensating for that. Okay, so if you do that and you assume that you are the only one in the race, that will be wrong. So even if you know the entire public administration, each and every concept, everything, you cannot say that, okay, I am going to be rank 1 in the IAS. Impossible. If you say it, that means what? You are creating an illusion of reality. Okay. That means you are assuming that there are no competitors. Okay. So you can only come first, not in the race in which you are running alone. Okay. If you can only come first when you assume that, okay, yes, there are competitors and now what I have to do. So his logic is, he is assuming that, okay, society is behaving in a particular way, and these are the dominant characteristics which make the society or social action in this particular way, which is not correct. There are a number of other dysfunctional elements in the society which he is not studying. There are several negatives which would be existing, but he does not take that into view. All the social members of the society behaving in a particular way, how is it possible? That means what? He is understanding the social action at an average level. Okay. Average reality, not the reality. Fine. So that is why it is called ideal type. Okay. And that is why we say that it may not be found in reality, because reality might comprise of number of factors. Okay. So maybe if you isolate the structure of bureaucracy from all the factors that create problems for the bureaucracy, then we can say this bureaucracy is ideal. But neither an ideal society will exist, neither an ideal bureaucracy will exist. Have you understood this? Okay, because this is a very complicated thing. Many times people say ideal type. So Mohit Bhattacharya, including Mohit Bhattacharya, in many books they are writing, the ideal type means that it is not to be found in reality, but that is not correct just. It is one of the aspects. Ideal type means what? The approach that he uses to understand eliminates various factors which would have been detrimental to the evolution of bureaucracy. He never tries to study those aspects which will create dysfunctionalities of bureaucracy. So he creates his own world, okay, or his view of society, and based on that he predicts the evolution of an institution. Okay. लिखिए ideal type approach. पहले आप ये लिख लो, it's okay. The Wirtz-Sahan approach. Okay. The Wirtz-Sahan approach. Wirtz-Sahan approach used by Weber is basically a theoretical construct basically a theoretical construct to simplify the real world. For a theorist, putting himself in the shoes of the observer or the actor and then trying to understand the reality is just an extrapolation for academic convenience. Okay, you need not write exactly in the exam, but you can understand. For academic convenience. Okay. So what he is doing? He is constructing his own reality and he is assuming that this reality is the real world. Okay. This methodology is known as the participant observation. Okay, but participant observation you do in reality. You become part of an experiment. Okay. So even if you want to view an experiment and the consequences of the particular actions or the actors in an experiment, what do? You do not observe it from outside. Because if you observe it from outside, you keep your own values intact and then you observe it. When you become part of that system or the experiment, it is assumed that you will eliminate your values. So you will understand the reality better. But what is the logic? See, the theorists have used it very easily. But that is not correct because most of the theorists who are using participant observation as a method like Mayo used the non-participant observation. Okay. So most of the theorists who are using, they don't understand that they are already prejudiced. By a conscious approach, I am getting into that experiment. No? So already I know that I am getting into this experiment to avoid my own values. That means what? That act is not unconscious, that is a conscious act. The moment it is conscious, it becomes prejudiced. But if I know that I am going here to understand this, that very moment I am prejudiced. Because I know that I am going here. If it happens with me spontaneously, then probably the experience that I will draw will be more real. Are you understanding? भाई आप कहीं आर्टिफिशियली एंटर हो रहे हैं और आपको पता है कि आप एंटर हो रहे हैं इसमें एक्सपेरिमेंट में, इसका मतलब क्या है? दैट यू नो इट ऑलरेडी यू आर प्रेजुडिस्ड. So it is very difficult for you to eliminate your own values. Yani for Weber, it was very difficult to eliminate the conception of an ideal bureaucracy by eliminating his experience of the traditional or the upheavals that he experiences in Germany. It is impossible. His construct of bureaucracy is a reflection of the experience he draws from his own Germany. You can never eliminate it from the bureaucracy that he creates. Okay. Even though he tries to use as far as possible, he does not want to use his own values into that. But आप उसको eliminate नहीं कर सकते. Okay. That criticism has been done by many theorists. That howsoever he feels, it was empirical. Okay. No theorist can eliminate completely the values which he experienced throughout his life. कोई भी human being उन values को eliminate नहीं कर सकता. Okay. But yes, for academic understanding, for theoretical development, he has used this method. Okay, and it is appreciable that at that time he uses this method, where most of the theorists were trying to understand the organizational structure from their own experiences. At least he wants to detach his structure from his own experience or his value system. He is eliminating it. Let us say Gulick sees the hierarchy is the best principle, coordination is the best principle. How? He experiences it. But he himself was part of that experience. Okay. So maybe if somebody else will be brought, third party, he will say, no, hierarchy is not the best principle, it is this. Because my experience is that coordination is better than hierarchy, Mooney and Rayleigh. Okay. Are you getting this logic? So it is very difficult to eliminate one's own views from one's theory that he makes. Okay. But Weber tries it and to an extent succeeds. Okay. Ideal type. Okay. Okay. This methodology may be considered similar to the participant observation. Similar to the participant observation. Participant observation. Where a theorist tries to eliminate his own personal values from the interpretation of reality. This approach is known as ideal type. Neglecting those factors which the theorist does not feel are important with respect to a particular phenomena. He develops his own microcosm. Of reality. Okay. Which gives rise to the ideal bureaucracy. This ideal institution may not be found in reality. As why it is not found in reality? Why cannot we find this in reality? Utopian. The society needs to be stable at that point of time where he conceives of his structure. But society is evolving. Either we will have the same society, okay, or the factors same way arranged where he conceives his bureaucracy. So what he conceives of a society which will be an ideal rational, and then there will be a need for ideal bureaucracy. Now this is in the evolution phase. So we might not find an ideal society, and obviously the ideal society, if it does not exist, then how the ideal bureaucracy will exist? Impossible. Okay. Not to be found in reality because the real world, आप उसको simple sense में लिखो, the real world would have many dynamic factors. The real world would have many dynamic factors which were neglected by Weber. To develop an ideal rational bureaucracy. Okay. So if you get a question on what is an ideal type approach, then what will you write? That ideal type is a methodological construct. It is an academic approach to eliminate various factors from the reality or from the real world in order to understand a particular phenomena. So what do? We simplify the understanding of a particular phenomena by eliminating number of things. And then, just like we observe something under a microscope, a small thing enlarging all its characteristics. Same thing is done by a theorist. Okay, he's saying traditional, so okay, this is the society which I'm experiencing, this is the modern part of the society, this is the traditional part of the society, and maybe this is some other part. So what Weber is doing? Okay, under a microscope he is viewing the modern part, and then he is extrapolating all the factors. That okay, modernism means this, that means what? What will be the ideal characteristics of this modernism? So let me extrapolate it to the maximum, and then see that okay, what is an ideal or what is a modern society. Traditional society, he sees certain factors and then goes back in time. Okay. Or he can say he upgrades it to the ideal society or some society which have been ideally traditional. Now he finds out, okay, what are these factors? Okay. It will be very clear when we study Riggs. He is also using the same logic. Okay, so see, if I see a villager, I can make out what a village will look like. Are you getting? By understanding the behavior and the traits of a villager or a rural person, I can make out what is a rural India. Are you getting? That is what Weber did. So just by simply understanding that these are certain characteristics of a traditional society, he full-fledged creates a traditional reality, and based on that he assumes that okay, this is how the power, authority and all these structures would have been created in that society. Okay, because where will the Weber go and find out the traditional society? It was phase of industrialization. So he might have seen traditional elements, not exactly a completely traditional society. Okay, that is an ideal type. So it is a theoretical construct, is a conceptual tool to understand the reality better, eliminating all those factors which you don't want to study as a theorist. What does it mean? That means what? Whatever he talks about the sociological understanding of bureaucracy, that may not be totally correct, because it is the ideal type approach he is using. So he is not telling us the reality which was existent, he is only telling us the reality which he feels was important. Are you getting this point? Okay, but that is acceptable, because theoretically somewhere you have to draw a line. If you want to marry a person and you have to understand certain things about him, okay, then you do a meeting half an hour, 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 6 months. Can you know everything about him? No. So what do you see? The things which you feel are important, fine. And you safely neglect all those things which you feel, okay, they are not important as far as the marriage is concerned. Okay. Same recruitment process, interviews. Half an hour, how can you judge a person that he is able to be a good administrator or not? So the interviewer has his own judgment or his own benchmark of judgment. And he finds out that, oh, okay, fine. He has to do these kind of things. Okay, for this he is suitable or not. Personally, what he is, I don't care. Okay, that is what Weber has done. And this happens. This is the most practical way of understanding any phenomena. So it is very difficult to incorporate all the factors, analyze them, and then understand what is the reality. Impossible. So as a theorist, successful, okay. But yes, as a criticism we can always do that, okay, he deviated, he neglected a major part of the reality, okay, trying to construct an ideal social reality which was not there. But it was necessary for the development of a theory. Fine. Historical comparative method. Okay. Now, is it possible or is it correct that the society will evolve in this way only? Okay. Let us assume the ancient Greek civilization or the Harappan civilization, okay, a time comes when the Harappan civilization was at its peak. Okay. With all the modern amenities which could have been or which people are experiencing today. Street lighting, drainage system, okay, godowns and granaries, okay, culturally they were evolved, okay, they were using the same symbols, religion was highly developed, many things were there. Okay. Now if it achieved its peak, then over the time it would have experienced a downfall. Or not, that is why there emerged agrarian societies again. Okay. People went actually backward. Okay. What does it mean? That it is not necessary that societies would have necessarily evolved in this fashion. So you might see the traditional system again going, or a modern system going back into the traditional system. And associating rationality only with the westernization. That is the biggest mistake he makes. That means what? Industrialization is what kind of economic force only. It is not a cultural force. But he assumes that it is modernizing all the aspects of society. So, using just an industrial development as the major factor in the transformation or rationalization of the society, okay, that is something very elementary. It is not merely an economic change which can rationalize the society. Society wants developments in all the aspects, cultural, social, religion, language, many things, expression, aesthetics, arts, everything, it has to be there. But he assumes that from feudal, okay, or from this traditional, okay, to this feudal, to mercantilism, to capitalism, now this is the transition. And this transition depicts the rationality. It is not correct. Monarchies were totally not, or monarchies cannot be criticized for being totally non-rational. How is it possible? How can you say monarchies were non-rational? They also were well developed. They were doing everything after due evaluation, analysis. Okay, number of things were well developed then also, which are not developed today also. Are you getting this point? So using a historical comparative approach is correct. Nothing, no doubt about it. Okay, just to understand how the society evolved. But the evolution must not be synonymous only to the industrialization. Or rationality is not just a consequence of industrialization. Okay. So that is one drawback. And most of these classical theorists, okay, what they assume or they understand rationality only with respect to the increasing scientific knowledge, nothing else. That is not just rationality. Okay. Robots are then the highly rational people. Okay. Robots can replace safely the human being, maybe tomorrow. Is it possible? No. Humans have cultural superiority, the strength of the values that humans have. Okay. So robots may be technically more equipped, okay, but humans are emotionally more equipped than robots. Okay. Themes of various movies which we see. So what is the logic? That rationality may not be considered only with respect to certain economic and technical changes in the society. Okay, it need not translate into rationality, even if it is happening. So industrialization will necessarily create a rational society, not necessary. Okay. It might be otherwise also. Okay. Most of the third world countries industrialized, but they could not become rational. They became more and more traditional in nature. Is it today what is happening? Cultural superiority, okay, concept of Hindu Rashtra, concept of this, ये क्या है? अगर Weber के analysis में we see these are traditional value systems. But India is $1 trillion GDP economy. Okay. Industrialization is quite high. Okay. Urbanization is almost 40%, 31 to 33% exact. And if we include all the fringe areas, almost 40%. Okay, that is a good level of urbanization. So you cannot say that Indian society have become totally rational. Have they? No. Are you getting? कोई जरूरी नहीं है कि society may accept the rational methods of conduct and behavior. No. Okay, so that assumption is also totally not correct. Okay, right. His understanding of, next paragraph you can write. his understanding of the society, as linearly transforming from traditional towards modern, as a consequence of industrial and scientific development, may not be totally correct. Okay. Rationality is not just associated with some technical and economic changes. Okay. In fact, there are examples where high economic growth coexists with high level of tradition. Can you give an example? Saudi Arabia economically prosperous नहीं है? China economically prosperous नहीं है? Okay. But he assumed a different concept that okay, yes, rationalization is taking place. No doubt, rationalization is taking place. Okay. But it need not necessarily reflect or undermine the role of traditional authority systems. So today, okay, because of the excessive rationalization, excessive industrialization, okay, consumerism, what is happening? The people want to go back to their roots. They are seeking the patronage and protection of the traditional values. Nuclear family to joint family again, okay, or at least not exactly joint family but extended joint family system. Okay, so they want those things. Okay, again you see the resurgence of the cultural values in most of the developed countries. Europe already conservative है, America भी हो रहा है. So what does it reflect? It does not mean that necessarily the rationality would be associated only with these factors. Okay. But his assumption may not be totally wrong. What he is assuming is that yes, the way the society needs to be governed will change. So it is correct. People, okay, but his assumption that yes, the rationality would always mean this is not correct. Okay. Riggs in fact takes it much forward. Okay. Fredericks, almost similar, Riggs and Weber. Okay. Both are using a historical comparative method. Okay. Fine. So this may also be criticized. His authority and domination centric model. Okay. Bureaucracy, next paragraph. Bureaucracy is a rigid structure. Bureaucracy is a rigid structure centered around authority and domination. A rigid structure centered around authority and domination. It is a power-centric system. It is a power-centric system which according to Weber has technical superiority over any other system, which according to Weber has technical superiority over any other system. This view of use and exercise of authority, this view of use and exercise of authority may not be totally correct. May not be totally correct. Okay. Hierarchical exercise of power. Hierarchical exercise of power. Hierarchical exercise of power may not be rational, and also may not be acceptable. Okay. Modern theories of organization view organization not just as a structure of power, but as an aggregate of humanistic and socio-cultural elements. Aggregate of humanistic and socio-cultural elements. So he views the organization of bureaucracy, or for that matter traditional system, as a system to exercise the power, and for exercising the power he assumes that this is the best way, but this may not be correct. Today the power is exercised in number of other formats, where the assumption is that the people who are accepting the power are more powerful than the people who are exercising the power. So his authority-centric approach to understand the organization and its rationality may not be correct. You use a structure which is highly centralized, which is highly dominating, people may not accept it. Then what? It is no more rational. Are you getting this point? So if you develop a structure of or arrangement of authority in such a manner where it is hierarchical in nature, it may not create the result you require. How at the level of society you can develop such structure? Where there are a number of diversities. Okay, if the government starts behaving in a bureaucratic manner, what will happen? Revolts, conflicts within a democracy, you see. It happens. Even for minor decisions, if the government does not take the acceptance or does not involve the people in any way, okay, the people resort to protest, dharna, strike, whatever. So it is obvious that the way he views that authority will be accumulated and it will be exercised, okay, which will be acceptable, is not correct. The rational societies may not view bureaucracy in a positive sense. That is the logic. More informed you are, more difficult for a bureaucratic system to govern you. This was probably not conceived by Weber. Okay, because his assumption is what? That the bureaucracy is rational and the society is non-rational. But as the society becomes rational, then what happens? The conflict between the bureaucracy and the society. So his view that the authority can be used or accumulated in this way and can be exercised, which will create a perfect outcome, was not correct. Okay, that is why we experience number of parallel or alternative structures to the bureaucracy in the modern world. Are you understanding this logic or not? If he was so sure or he was so predictable of the evolution of society into rational society, then the utility of the bureaucracy should not have been questioned. है कि नहीं? बट अभी क्या हो रहा है? Everybody is, or nobody, none of the societies are welcoming the bureaucratic structures in their or in the governance process. Sorry. The governments are trying to reform the bureaucracies. They are trying to make the bureaucracy more flexible. Why? That means what? His prediction of a rational society needing an ideal structure of bureaucracy is not correct. आया कुछ ज्यादा ओवरहीट हो गया CPU. So logic है, okay, that अगर ऐसा होता, or if it would be true, then definitely people would be everywhere creating bureaucratic structures today. Okay, but people are looking for alternatives of bureaucracy. So more rational a society is getting, the more disenchanted with the bureaucracy they are becoming. So his prediction may not be totally correct. But this is the best way of accumulating the authority and exercising the authority. Okay. Most of the democracies today want non-bureaucratic structures. Okay. ये लिख लो नीचे ताकि याददाश्त जो तुम्हारी आमिर खान से इंस्पायर्ड है, ठीक है, ठीक, लिख लो, याद रहेगा भाई। प्रेजेंट में रहो, रविशंकर जी बोलते हैं। पास्ट में जाओगे और प्रॉब्लम है, तुम फ्यूचर देखने लग रहे हो अभी बैठ के कि मैं क्या लिखूंगा एग्जाम में, है ना? अभी सोच रहे होगे तुम, ऐसा नहीं सोच रहे हो, ये मत सोचना। जनरली व्हेन वी स्टडी वी डू, ऑल ऑफ अस डू इट, ठीक है? अब आएगा ऐसा तो ऐसा लिखूंगा, ऐसा लिखूंगा, अरे पहले आने तो दो, पहले याद कर लो। So it is the human nature, we either live in past or in future but not in present. So बच्चे परेशान होते हैं, भाई ये पढ़ेंगे सर ऐसा होगा वैसा होगा, ठीक है? अरे जो अभी हो रहा है उससे पता चल जाएगा क्या होगा। If you evaluate the present properly, you will understand what is going to happen. So we are all obsessed with that, the unseen. Okay, as human beings, we always want something which is unpredictable. Okay, right. In the bracket you can write. Most of the modern democracies, Western or non-Western type, Western or non-Western type, Western or non-Western type, are looking for alternatives to bureaucracy. Looking for alternatives to bureaucracy. Bureaucratic structures are considered to be anti-developmental. Anti-developmental and an obstruction to the societal development. Okay. So neither, that means what? Neither the bureaucracy can promote or implement the developmental policies, neither it will let the society develop, both. So it is acting as a hindrance to both. If the government wants to implement development policies, the bureaucracy will refrain from doing it, or it will become a hindrance to that. If the society wants to evolve or develop, then also the bureaucratic control will reduce it. Okay. So his assumption that, okay, rationality of society would necessarily need a more bureaucratic structure may not be totally correct. Structural idealism. Okay. Weber is obsessed with the search for the ideal structure. Ideal structure, and also assumes that such a structure would be the most ethical one. His idea of neutrality, anonymity and perfectly, or you can say perfectly following all those, what his assumption? His assumption is that, okay, there are idealisms associated with this structure. So this structural idealism does not talk only about an ideal structure. It is saying the idealisms which are associated with the structure. That this is the structure, so it has all the Sarvagun Sampan bureaucrat. Okay. So if you have this structure, then you can assume, okay, or you can at least accept that these are the most ethical, or it is the most ethical values, or the bureaucrats will have the more ethical values as desired by the society. So he is not only associating his ideal structure with rationality and perfectionism, but also with a moral order. This is a very important analysis. That his assumption of morality and society are the protections, preservers, the conservers and the perpetuators of the morals and ideals of the society would be these bureaucrats. That is what he assumes. That bureaucracy not only preserves the rationality and efficiency, it also preserves the moral fabric of the society. Are you getting? That is why he is saying structural idealism. अगर ये है तो कुछ भी खराब नहीं होगा, लेकिन ये सही नहीं है भाई. ये स्ट्रक्चर ही is the biggest limitation of the bureaucracy. Okay. The bureaucracy is considered as not only an efficient instrument, is considered as not only an efficient instrument, but also the protector of the moral and ethical, values of the society. The ideal bureaucrat has the characteristics of the most ethical, or the most ethically, most ethically desirable human being. Because he is impartial, he is unbiased, he remains anonymous, he believes in neutrality, he is politically detached, okay, he is impersonal. Now what you want? That is what an ideal or an ethically typified bureaucrat, that is what he says. That this bureaucracy is not just a symbol of rationality and efficiency, but it is a symbol of the highest level of impersonality that can ever be. That is why he assumes that it is ideal, क्योंकि इसमें जो इंसान है, the person is also ideal and the structure is also ideal. So recruitment system, entire procedure, everything that he feels, okay, he assumes that ये सबसे ethical system जो हो सकता है कभी वो ये है. So you see his inherently he wanted what? A good system, an ethical system. You cannot criticize him that he did not understand the area. He understood that society is largely comprising of people having their own interests. The humans or the normal humans cannot think of anything without their own interest. Okay. But it is the bureaucrat who is not a normal human being. Okay. So the moment you say bureaucrat, that does not mean he is a human being. Yeah, because he is such ethically trained, he is morally conscious, He is the preserver of all the ideal virtues which you can desire for in a person. तभी उसको इतना दहेज दिया जाता है भाई कि तुम खुश रहो भाई. Which is not correct, है कि नहीं? बिहार में तो है. बिहार से कौन है? Be happy that you are from Bihar. You should have pride in that. इंडिया में जो कोई नहीं कर सकता वो बिहारी कर सकता है. Fine. So you see, Bihar, UP, MP, the obsession with bureaucracy is not because bureaucracy is some superior class, but because they have obsession with, or intelligent class, they have obsession with power. Okay. So people, Weber did not conceive of bureaucracy in that terms. He assumed that they have the power, but they are detached from the power. Okay. So they will be like saintly people acting on behalf of the society, who knows that they have all the supernatural powers, but they will not use it for themselves. लेकिन वैसे ही लोग हैं ना, तभी तो ये बोल रहे हैं कि भाई इतना पावर है इसके अंदर, अथॉरिटी है, इट इज हाईली रैशनल, इट नोज एवरीथिंग, but it will not act for itself. So see what kind of idealism Weber assumes behind the bureaucracy. Okay. Neglects the ecological view of the institution or bureaucracy. Okay, this is a criticism by Riggs. You can just write one line so that again we can proceed with specific theorists who have criticized the bureaucracy. Okay. Okay. Bureaucracy as a structure, bureaucracy as a structure is more suitable for stable societies as the ideal characteristics give it a static nature. It can preserve and maintain the order. It can preserve and maintain the order, but cannot perform under the situations of dynamic change. Under the situations of dynamic change. So it is saying that, okay, the kind of ideal features it has, so when it is ideal, that means what? There is no need of changing it. If it does not change, but the society changes, then what will happen? It will become, it will become obstructive to the society itself. So the society which are more or less progressing at a particular rate or a steady state, then the bureaucracy's performance would be best. But the societies which are highly dynamic and erratic kind of changes are there, the bureaucracy may not be able to understand that how it has to act. So it does not include the ecological perspective. Ecological means what? That the ideal structures are ideal according to the needs of the society. They are not universally ideal. But he conceives of a universally ideal structure, dividing it off, or dividing the understanding of society from the study of this structure. Right. Superiority of legal rational authority over others. Okay. ये भी एक criticism है, लिखिए. The assumption of Weber that the legal rational system is superior in terms of performance or knowledge is not correct. Most of the developing countries most of the developing countries may be more successful under the traditional authority structure than the legal rational. Examples हैं Southeast Asia, Middle East, Nepal, Bhutan, etc. And even India. Even though we are saying democracy, okay, democracy and bureaucracy, administration, civil services, okay, but most of the regions in the country, okay, they are basically influenced by what? Their socio-cultural norms. Okay. In fact, law sometimes acts as a deterrent, okay, but it does not inspire, it does not motivate people. The culture may inspire and motivate people more than the law. Okay. So what is the inherent value system which they desire? It is the tradition. Okay. You see the emergence of Babas, okay, the emergence of various type of traditional institutions which are still there, okay, and they dominate the lives of people. Religion is still a dominant force in the society. Okay. So if the rationality was an outcome of the economic and technical changes, then everybody would have become secular today. Okay. No doubt it can propel the secularization of the society, okay, but not necessarily that it will always be in the same trajectory as the same path. So maybe Western societies evolve this way, but these societies may evolve this way. So non-functional of aspect of bureaucracy. Okay. Khap panchayat hai na bhai, and still working, still people are accepting. So what does this mean? That in spite of their proximity to the urban areas, to the urbanization, in spite of economic prosperity, okay, they are still holding on to the traditional value system which they find or which they feel is more beneficial to them. Regionalism, ethnicity, ethnic conflicts, racial conflicts, all this is what? This is an outcome of the strength of the traditional system over the legal rational system. Supreme courts, high courts, okay, howsoever rational they become, okay, number of their judgments, if we see, these judgments also reflect that somewhere they are also inspired or influenced by the socio-cultural traditions. Agni. So, Jallikattu ka, you have, what happened to Jallikattu?
It's been allowed by an ordinance.
The government. So, judiciary may try to be rational, okay, but the executive has to act non-rational. So what influences them? Pollution, सही है, गलत है, सबके लिए है. No doubt pollution will affect everyone. Okay. Pollution is the worst form of asset we can transfer to our next generation. Okay. But nobody is bothered about it. तो इतना रैशनल कभी इंसान नहीं सोच सकता जितना वेबर सोच रहा था. ठीक है, it is impossible. Fine. So let us take the criticism, these are general criticisms of Weber. Okay, now let us take one by one various people who have criticized him. Okay. So there are a number of theoretical criticism. In reality, obviously, many of them accepted that Weberian bureaucracy is the best. Okay. So the biggest criticism of the bureaucracy comes from the Riggs, Fred Riggs. Fred Riggs, along with certain people, I mean, obviously, who were senior to Fred Riggs, okay, John Goss, and Robert Dahl. Fredericks, John Gauss and Robert Dahl. Okay. They were the supporters of, or they were the proponents of the ecological approach to the study of public administration. Okay. Both. PubAD as an organization, PubAD as a discipline. Okay. So they were the pioneers of ecological approach. Okay. And also the cross-cultural approach. So they are saying, they were initially actually criticizing the the obsessions of these theorists, or these theorists with the science of administration. Okay, universal principle building or universal approach to the study of public administration. Okay, so they are saying that these people who have conceived of a discipline of PubAD, with some scientific content or scientific principle, and also assuming that there is a structure of administration which is based on these principles, and this structure is universal in nature. Okay. That means we also know the science of PubAD, and we also know that what will be the ideal structure of administration, both based on that science of PubAD. Fine. So they are saying that this is not correct, or that it is not acceptable to be scientific. Why? So Rick says, or John Gauss, who brings this idea, he is saying that the moment I take this knowledge into the non-Western context, if I try to understand that this is what public administration is, or this is how we govern a society, if I use this knowledge in the non-Western context, I find that it is not relevant. So my claim for science, Robert Dahl, our claim for science of administration as we have perceived is not correct the moment I step out of this Western culture. So he says that there is no cross-cultural comparison. Unless I compare it with the other cultures, unless I use it in the other societies, till that time I cannot claim that it is a science. Because something to be universal must be efficient in different societies, in different contexts. Something to become a fact must be a fact irrespective of the context. So they bring this view that if you have to study an administration, or if you have to study public administration, then you must relate it to its ecology. The moment you relate it to its ecology, you can understand its functioning better. Then assuming that there is an ideal structure which functions the same way in all the societies. So they say that you have isolated the structure from its society, and based on that you people have said that there is a science of administration. So they bring this perspective that no, we must compare it. Unless we compare it, we cannot claim that it is universal. Or you can simplify in that way that we need to go and test it in every situation and then we can claim that yes, it is ideal and it is rational irrespective of the situations. So he's saying all the claim of science which these people have made, Gulick, Kerwick and everybody, all the claim for science, or the Weber who talks about an ideal system or ideal structure, he's saying all this claim is not corroborated by the empirical evidence. The moment it is used somewhere else, it fails to deliver the results which has been conceived by Max Weber. So to counter the bureaucratic approach, bureaucratic approach means that we are viewing administration as a bureaucracy. So to counter the bureaucratic approach, they come with an ecological approach. Ecological approach means what? That if I think of administration, then I will assume that administration does not exist in vacuum, and there is a society which influences it. Okay. And society, politics, okay, culture, okay, which in turn may affect the economic system. Okay. So, it is saying, or the ecological approach is saying, that unless we study the administration or the knowledge that we have developed with respect to particular societies, we will not be able to know the real science behind the public administration. So they are saying, as we move from, let's say, US, so you have developed your knowledge here, and you think that this knowledge will be applicable. Okay, here. So they are saying the moment we use this knowledge here, what happens? It gets changed. And when it gets changed, what does it mean? That this has an influence over this. So the same knowledge, the same structure when I am implementing here, its consequences are different. Its elements change, characteristics change. So why do they change? So now they want to know that why they change, because this is an ideal structure. This is an ideal knowledge. That is how we have understood this society and the administrative system of a society. So why it changes? He's saying, obviously we are using the same structure, so where the change is coming from? The change is coming from the society. Because if I take this structure back here, then it starts behaving same way. So they use this logic. This is also a theoretical way of understanding things. Okay, they use this logic and they come with something known as ecological approach. That every system, every structure needs to be understood, or its utility is with respect to its ecology. Okay. So now if we have to make a science out of this knowledge, then we must study the structure here, and we must study the structure or the knowledge here, and then we must compare. Find out the common elements which are more or less stable in both the societies or across different societies, and then let us say we bring all the commonalities at one place, and now we can claim that these common elements can be considered as the science of administration. Are you getting this point? So if there are some common features, okay, which do not change from society to society across the cultures, then those things can be claimed as science. Other things cannot be claimed as science. So they are saying that the process of making it scientific is not that easy, because you are assuming that all the societies will behave like the Western societies. So based on this assumption, you have developed the knowledge and you feel that this knowledge is universally applicable. Are you understanding this? So they bring the ecological perspective first, viewing a system in its ecology, okay, everywhere. Then comparing it with each other. Okay, this is the cross-cultural comparison. The behavior and the performance of administration in one culture and its performance in another culture, now compare it. Are you understanding this? This is known as comparative public administration. So comparative public administration approach which came was basically an outcome of the emergence of non-Western countries. So all the knowledge which they had created here, it did not seem to be applicable to the non-Western countries, so they had to study them separately. Because if they wanted to make it a science, then they needed to know what are the specific requirements of developing countries or underdeveloped countries. Are you getting this point? So if I have to govern a developed country, I have the knowledge. Okay. But I am trying to apply the same knowledge in the non-developing country, and I don't get the result. Okay. So it will create two things. One, the distrust of me as a theorist or as a country or as a nation in the minds of the underdeveloping countries. The second, it will raise a question upon the level of academic and the research integrity on the part of the academicians as well as the people who are practicing it. The public servants might question that, okay, you are saying this is the best, but it is not the best. Okay, the governments may question the utility of these principles. The people who are using these principles may question the utility of these principles. Okay, so for academic integrity, as well as to understand the nature of systems which will be required by the developing countries, they come up with this comparative public administration. Okay,
Similar to Wilson's idea of science and administration.
yeah, obviously, but obviously yeah, correct. It is comparative perspective only. But Wilson obviously did not develop a theoretical model to be used. They are developing a theoretical framework that how they will compare. Wilson is simply saying borrow it, use it. But the logic is same, yes. But it is not as advanced as they are saying. So Wilson brought the comparative aspect but did not study the different administrative systems with that aspect. And in fact, Wilson's comparison is more or less in the same perspective. Non-Western, yes. So if you say European and American, somewhere they share the similar cultural perspective. So this approach, ecological, cross-cultural and comparative, it became a kind of tool now in the hands of the theory building or the theory builders in public administration. Prior to that, they did not conceive of this approach. Okay, they knew that we can use comparison, but how, why, what is the consequence, what are the lacunas, why we have to improve it, all they could understand only when these people come. Itna samajh mein aaya? So because the bureaucracy was criticized for not being or for not understanding the ecological aspects, okay, the socio-cultural aspects and how it influences the administration. Okay. The criticism of Weber's bureaucratic structure as non-ecological by them. Non-ecological, the knowledge which developed by by Weber of bureaucracy is non-comparative in nature. It is non-ecological in nature and it does not suit the cultural sentiments of the non-Western country. That is the criticism that they make. Okay. But even though whatever they develop is basically an outcome of the limitations of the Weber only. Okay, now they are not doing something new. What was missing in Weber, they use it. Okay. You right? Okay, Riggs, Gauss and Dahl. Riggs, Gauss and Dahl, the proponents of the comparative public administration, the proponents of the comparative public administration criticize Weber's model for being non-ecological, and unsuitable to the non-Western culture. Unsuitable to the non-Western culture. Unsuitable to the non-Western culture. Without a cross-cultural study, the claim of a science of administration or of an ideal structure is a myth. is a myth. Okay. Cross-cultural comparison is necessary. Cross-cultural comparison is necessary to bring out. Cross-cultural comparison is necessary to bring out the commonalities between the administration in different societies. Which can then be considered as universal. So they believe that we need to compare, we need to understand the administration and the knowledge ecologically or with respect to its society, and thirdly, we need to have a cross-cultural study. So comparison किस चीज का होगा? Administrative system and the knowledge both. So if I say bureaucracy is an ideal structure performing or giving the best in America and Europe, then I will use this structure in India and then see whether it is the best structure or not, whether I get the same performance or not. So they will become my benchmark for comparison, no doubt. Okay. Why? Because for the time being, I need an ideal benchmark, that is this Western bureaucracy. Okay. But it need not be ideal. Are you getting? But for the comparison, I may take it as ideal. But in the real world, what happens? Most of the bureaucracies, Weberian bureaucracies, when used in the non-Western countries, they become deviant in nature. Deviant means they are not functioning as per the Weber's logic or as per the Weber's rationality, but still they are beneficial. So now we can question Weber. That you see, these characteristics are not there. This is a highly politicized bureaucracy. This is dominated by the ruler, but it is still functioning. How do you explain a monarchical system using a rational bureaucracy? Can you explain? Can Weber explain? No. For him, the ideal bureaucratic structure would be incompatible with a monarchical system. Are you getting this point? So the moment I use it, and I don't get the same result, but it is not against the society or it does not create any problem in the society, I would say, fine. I would change these things and I would use it in my society. Now it is ideal for me and not the Weberian bureaucracy. So the existence of deviant bureaucracies in a number of countries, and these deviant bureaucracies being successfully leading the or increasing the performance of the programs and policies, was considered to be better for non-Western countries or developing countries. This is what Frederick says. He says in most of the developing countries, it will be bureaucracy of non-Weberian type, which would be more successful. And why it will be successful? Because their cultural context is different. They may not accept the ideal bureaucratic model. It will come in conflict with the political system, with the cultural system, and so many things. Right. In most of the non-Western countries, deviant bureaucracies are much more successful. Deviant bureaucracies are much more successful than Weberian bureaucracy. In fact, according to Riggs, the developing countries must use traditional authority structures or ancient Chinese type bureaucracies. For better performance. So he's saying it's better to use them rather than use the Weberian model. Okay. So divine bureaucracies concept also comes. That divine bureaucracies are something which deviate from the ideal Weberian bureaucracy, but they need not be unsuccessful, need not be dysfunctional. They are highly contributing to the development of the society. Okay. So many people have studied the divine bureaucracies. That what could be the alternatives to the ideal bureaucracy, like because Weber is using the term bureaucracy with respect to some ideal only. Okay, where there is a person Merle Fenso. So Merle Fenso is using a variety of nomenclatures with the bureaucracy. Number of adjectives with the term bureaucracy. Okay, he's saying military dominated bureaucracy is also a bureaucracy. Okay. He identifies that there can be what kind of divine bureaucracies may be. Okay, right. You need write the next point. Don't write everything under this. Okay, put up a next point. Divine bureaucracies and their nature. Okay. According to Merle Fenso, the bureaucracies need not be the ideal bureaucracy as conceived by Weber. Instead, there are numerous variations, like number one. Military dominated bureaucracy. Leave some space, maybe 2, 3 lines, 4 lines. Military dominated bureaucracy, then ruler dominated bureaucracy. Ruler dominated bureaucracy. ruling bureaucracy, directly exercising the power. Representative bureaucracy, party state bureaucracy. So he is saying that what? That the Weberian type of bureaucracy is just one type of bureaucracy. In reality, we may find the bureaucratic or the divine type of bureaucracies existent in number of countries, and they are very successful. So his expressed association of a rational structure or of a particular structure with the rationality may not be totally correct. So you can use his name wherever you want to analyze. That bureaucracy need not be exactly Weberian in nature. Okay. So what is a military dominated bureaucracy? Pakistan. Okay. Many of the countries where the militia rules. Okay. Or junta. Have you heard about junta? Okay. So the countries where we have the military coup, and finally a junta is established as the one exercising the power, so the bureaucracy functions under that. It is not purely a free instrument, a neutral instrument. Okay, it does not reflect all the features of the Weberian bureaucracy, but still it is successful. Okay. So military dominated bureaucracy, where the actual power resides in the military system, and administration of bureaucracy is mostly carrying out the civilian functions. Okay. So examples may be this. Okay. Then he says the ruler dominated bureaucracy, obviously the monarchies. Okay. Or even the autocrats. Okay, the leaders who have become very powerful, okay, who are ruling or governing for a very long period of time. Okay. So in those countries, he is saying that we find a ruler-dominated bureaucracy. Here there may not be, the political system may not be very strong, but there is a monarch and there is a group of people or his council, and they are mostly the one who are controlling the bureaucracy. So bureaucracy may not function, again, in a neutral, apolitical manner. Neither it may be purely working in the public interest, but he is saying that it has all the elements of efficiency and rationality. Okay. So dominated by a ruler. Okay. Ruling bureaucracies. So here he is saying that here it is not some person or a group which exercises the power using the bureaucracy. Here the bureaucracy itself exercises the power. Like, yes, colonial administration. So colonial administration was technically a rule by the bureaucracy itself. Okay. And it was quite successful. Representative bureaucracy is almost the same what we are talking about, or the Weberian bureaucracy. It is diverse, it is representative of various elements of the society. Okay, it is not a class, more or less works for the betterment of the entire society, and obviously is controlled by a democratic system. Okay. As Weber says, representative bureaucracy in a representative democracy. Okay. So if the political system is more representative, okay, obviously it can control the bureaucracy, okay, and the bureaucracy will also reflect the values of the democracy. Party-state bureaucracy is found in the communist countries. Communist systems, statist systems, socialist, okay, or where there you find explicit state monopoly, okay. But generally, you have a one-party system. It is not democratic, it is mostly communist in nature. So here what happens, that you do not find any difference between the bureaucracy and the party. So party has one governing body or governing council known as the Politburo, the highest decision making body of the political party. So in Politburo or in the bureaucracy, you will find most of the members of the politics who will occupy the top administrative posts. So heads of the departments, heads of the administrative organizations are basically politicians or members of the Politburo. Okay. So you don't find any difference between where the administration ends and where the politics start. So infiltration of the politics or political elements into the bureaucracy. This is a party-state bureaucracy and it is visible in the communist countries. Okay. So that also counters the claim of Weber that mostly the bureaucracy is a feature of the capitalist systems. Is it or not? But in the industrial, mostly the industrialized countries will find the bureaucracies catering to the needs of industrial systems. But here, or the Marx, when he says that okay, there will be no bureaucracy in a communist system, okay, so he counters that claim also, that it is impossible, okay, not to have bureaucracy, okay, or not to have a bureaucracy even in communist countries. So we find the existence of bureaucracy even in the socialist and the communist regimes. So bureaucracy less. None of the societies may be visible as bureaucracy less. In at least that conception of Weber is correct. The form, the structure, the behavior may be different. But according to him, what? Most of the societies or more of the systems to be governed require a bureaucracy in one form or the other. So without bureaucracy they cannot exist. Okay. Okay, write one line just below this. Bureaucracy may have various forms and structures, visible across the societies. But its strength is visible in terms of its utility. Universally. In fact, no society can exist without bureaucracy. It may be of different forms. Rationality, degree of rationality may be different. But every society requires a kind of bureaucracy. Okay, that is what Weber has already conceived of. A traditional system will have a traditional bureaucracy, which he does not call as bureaucracy. Okay, but even that requires an organized administrative system. So any society requires an organized administrative system. It may not be reflecting the true sentiment of Weberian bureaucracy. So many people have encountered the Weber's model, okay, by saying that Weber did not conceive of the deviations or the possible structural combinations of the bureaucracy. There may be other structures like Goodner. Okay, Goodner is one theorist who is saying that there can be two types of bureaucracies. Majorly, they can be divided into two types or three types, you can say at the most. Okay, mock bureaucracy, punishment-centered bureaucracy, okay, representative bureaucracy. Okay, he comes with his own idea that there may be three forms of bureaucracies rather than single form of ideal structure which Weber conceives. Goodner has extensively worked with respect to the gender perspective of the bureaucracy. So he criticizes the bureaucracy for also being non or does not include the gender perspective. Why? Why does not include the gender perspective? And it is obviously a very valid criticism because Weber being a sociologist, why did he eliminate the gender perspective from the study of bureaucracy? So, he conceived of the institutions mostly influenced by the patriarchal or the patriarchal sense of the power and authority. He felt it was the better way to organize the power and authority. And that is why also he did not consider various other elements. वहाँ भी वो non-ecological ही है. Process of homogenization. Simply thinking that okay, society consists of people, but the people are not people, they are divided into two genders at least. Okay. Also the bureaucracy does not seem to be compatible with the needs of the 50% of the society. The other half of the society does not seem to be compatible. Even though it is rational, but it is centered around power and authority. So to govern or to bring gender equality in the society, you need number of other values, okay, or you need a number of other traits apart from this. You need more sensitive bureaucracy, more value-based bureaucracy, more normative bureaucracy, okay, or more empathetic bureaucracy. That is not there. So he had used his approach of or gender approach to understand the role of bureaucracy. Later, Camilla Stevens, Martha Nussbaum, okay, a number of other theorists, basically feminist theorists, they are using their approach to understand the bureaucracy, they are criticizing it. That if you see the traditional or vocabulary of the traditional or classical public administration, that vocabulary, it is totally gender biased. Okay. There is always a discrimination against the other gender or the other sex. Okay, so they are saying, you see, the organization is characterized by a unity of command, by centralization of authority. It has hierarchy as one of the most important principles, strict formal relationship, superior-subordinate relationship. Okay, the main function of the superior controlling the subordinate. What does it reflect? It reflects a masculine orientation of the theory building. So all the theorists are mostly obsessed with the characteristics of male being more or performance being more dependent on the characteristics or male characteristics than the female characteristics. Okay. So that is also a big criticism of bureaucracy or the Weberian model of bureaucracy. In fact, Weber can be considered as one who inspired the masculine vocabulary of public administration. Endorsing, with power, authority, domination, everything. He is endorsing all of them. He is saying that yes, a rational structure it comes with these characteristics. But that is totally not acceptable today. Okay. Behavioralist, human relation theorist, all of them criticize. Now they come with their own logic. Human relation theorists are saying that Weber's conception of the bureaucracy as merely a structure does not think about the people in the structure. So human relations movement was about understanding the organization with respect to the needs of the human beings. But this view was highly restricted. But even then, at least it was an improvement over the traditional and classical approach. where organizations' needs were primary. The needs of the organization dominated the needs of the human beings in the organization. Okay, all the organizations were designed in that way, that they must fulfill the needs of the organization and not the needs of the people in the organization. But human relation movement comes, you can say, as not as a reactionary theory. Okay, it was not an activist theory, but it was a subtle reaction to the Taylorism or dominant Taylorism. Okay, Taylorism can also be equated with this dominance of techniques, science, making it more methodical and procedural, everything. Okay, systematic flowchart type. But the life cannot be like flowchart. The human relations which develop at the workplace, they cannot work in a flowchart manner. Okay, you cannot obviously think of your decisions in the form of if then else. सोच सकते हो हर डिसीजन, spontaneous होगा बहुत सारा decision. Fine. So human relations comes with this logic. Okay. But it is not a radical counter of the classical approach. Okay. You can say it was more subtle criticism. Okay. So they find out that okay, this kind of traditional model of which the Weber was the symbol, okay, that does not suit the modern organizations. Okay, but there will be a contradiction because Weber is mostly concerned with the governance of society, whereas the other traditional classical theorists are concerned with the governing of the industrial systems. So the criticism of the human relations movement was more oriented towards Gulick, Erwin, Fayol, Taylor rather than Weber. But we can take it analogous to that criticism because here also he does not conceive of the needs of the human beings. The bureaucrat which he conceives of is what? A kind of bureaucrat who is devoid of any human values. In fact, he assumes that if he becomes more emotional, more subjective in nature, then he will become a threat to the bureaucracy itself. So bureaucracy will act by eliminating him or by restricting him within the bureaucracy. That is how the system works. Are you getting this logic? So if some deviant elements are visible in the Weberian bureaucracy, then he will say or he will assume that the bureaucracy will act against that individual. By what? By making itself more rigid now. So if you are coming out of the mold, okay, what it will do? It will reduce the mold, restrict the mold so that you have to fit in now. I think that is how the bureaucracy acts. So many people, okay, they have criticized this aspect also, that he does not conceive of a human being, a bureaucrat who is rational, who is intelligent, who is everything, so he might be creative also. He might require the intellectual space within the organization and you are not allowing him because you are protecting the rationality of the system. So what kind of bureaucrat is he visualizing? A non-rational bureaucrat within the rational bureaucracy. Because any rational person would not accept anything as it is. The rules can be questioned, the procedures can be questioned, even the entire system can be questioned. Okay, that is why you see the deviant behaviors of the bureaucrats. Civil services activism, politicization of bureaucracy, corruption within the bureaucracy, okay, or pro-society inclinations of number of bureaucrats. Bureaucrats leaving the bureaucracy for some other goals. So why this happens? This obviously happens for people leaving the bureaucracy, resigning from the jobs. Attrition rate is very high. If you take the Indian bureaucracy, 25% attrition rate at the middle level. That means every 100 IAS officer who joins, okay, after 14 years of service, 25 of them leave the job. So ऐसा क्यों होता? If everything was correct, that he has become more bureaucratic, so he will accept the bureaucratic organization. But this is, so numerous criticisms are based on that. Okay, so human relations movement, even though we cannot say directly it is a criticism of Weberian model, but it is a criticism of the assumptions which the Weber makes regarding the human beings. Okay. Then comes the behavioral approach. Okay, behavioral approach is concerned with the study of behavior. more empirical study. It is more positivist than the earlier traditional model. Behavioralism is associated with empirical study, but not of the structure of the human being. Behavioralism is, the concern of behavioralism is the study of the deviations of the human behavior and how we can control these deviations. So structures once established, they may not deviate, but the people who are part of that structure, they will deviate. So once people deviate, then what is the way to control them? Make more rules? Not always. Punish them? Yes, maybe sometimes. But again, the punishment may lead to revolts and conflicts. It will affect the productivity. So the traditional model of controlling the human beings in the organization may not be effective. So behavioralism comes with the knowledge that, okay, the productivity or for that matter efficiency of the organization depends upon the efficiency of the human beings and not just the rules. So let us study the human beings. But how do we study the human beings? Obviously not from a prejudiced mind, not from an emotional perspective, okay, but from an empirical perspective. So it starts from the basic understanding of human beings. Okay, basic understanding. That, okay, what are the needs of humans in an organization? What are the assumptions behind people joining an organization? Okay. So some have economic needs, or primarily there are economic needs. But once they enter into the system, okay, the variety of needs emerge. Are you understanding? Initially everybody wants money. But once he gets into the system, he might require so many other things. Because the employees are also human or social beings. So behavioralism tries to study that. That, okay, what are the various types of needs, various types of assumptions people hold regarding the organization. Let us study it empirically, find out a trend, okay, develop this trend or this information into a knowledge, and then now do a better management. So compared to the classical, it is much more empirical, but it is pro-human. Pro-human means the study of human beings, not pro-human in the sense of emancipation of human beings. Later some theorists come who believe that organizations can empower the individuals. Are you understanding this or not? No. Sure. Okay, so organizations can empower, organizations can bring drastic changes into the lives of people and not just the material changes. Okay. They are known as what kind of theorists? Post-behavioralists. Behavioralists and post-behavioralists, even though you can say that, okay, they are also like behavioralists only. Post-behavioralists are not different from behavioralists. But yes, they are behavioralists, and in fact they are considered as later behavioralists. Later behavioralists were empirical as well as humanistic both. So they believed in scientific study, okay, but they did not believe this study or the knowledge will be only used for the manipulation of human beings. Because the more informed you are regarding the human behavior, the more manipulation can be done by the management. So same thing, if a mother wants to, a child, he keeps sucking his thumb, so mother wants to stop that. So she takes him to the doctor. He says, okay, reward him. First punish him. She punishes him every day. Still he doesn't stop it. When he sees the mother, he stops it. But again, when he does not, when he is alone, he starts sucking the thumb. Then he says, okay, you reward him. When he is not sucking the thumb, reward him. She starts rewarding again, he does not. Okay, the frequency of sucking the thumb reduces, but it does not vanish. Okay. Then she comes with an innovative idea. She makes him wear loose pants. Okay. So, he keeps managing his pants, only does not get a time to suck his thumb. Now that is innovation. So if you understand the human nature, so it may not be only the money. Are you understanding? That is the classical approach. It may not only be the punishment. It may be something which may be a combination or maybe different from this. That is what the behavioralism wanted, or later behavioralists. So we are saying it is not just the material, it is not just the fear which can create or change the human behavior, there are something else. Okay. So they come with number of things. Now they are the biggest critic of the Weberian model. Okay. So we'll do it tomorrow. You write one question. Okay, your answer sheets and many answers are there, but answer sheets of the test I will give on Monday, and I will discuss also the test on Monday. Thank you. Provide a descriptive criticism of the methodology and assumptions. Descriptive criticism of the methodology and assumptions behind the Weberian bureaucracy. The Weberian bureaucracy. Descriptive means you have to first write what are the criticism and then you have to analyze them also. Okay. Second question. What is ideal type? What is ideal type? What is its academic utility? What is ideal type and what is its academic utility? Ideal type, what is an ideal type? And what is its academic utility? Tomorrow we'll start with the discussion on the second question. What is ideal type? You bring your points. What you should write.